everybody, it's Kathy Kuntz at Cool Choices. I'm delighted you could join me today to talk about how materiality feels relative, and the princess and the pea. I don't get to talk about fairy tales very often. I'm apparently a little tongue-tied today. It's terrific you could be here with me today for this conversation. I feel like we talk about this a lot sometimes one-on-one with sustainability advocates, so I'm excited to do a webinar on it. As background about Cool Choices, for those of you not familiar with us, we're a nonprofit based in Madison, Wisconsin, and our quest is really behavior change around climate change. So inspiring individuals, businesses, whole communities to adopt sustainable practices that reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, which means we are interacting a lot with folks in the change space and thinking about kind of what matters to people and what motivates them to move forward. And that work kind of inspired us recently to reflect on the Princess and the Pea fairy tale. For those of you not familiar with this, it's not, to my knowledge, a children's movie at this point. The story of the Princess and the Pea is a young woman shows up at a castle, says she's a princess. The queen mother is skeptical, and so devises this test that piling up a lot of mattresses with a pea underneath all of them to see if the princess notices the pea. And indeed, as the story goes, she does indeed. There's this precariously tall pile of mattresses that she climbs up on. I remember vividly this story from my childhood and thinking, why isn't she scared to be sleeping that high off the ground? But indeed, the young woman notices and cannot sleep because there's this annoying pea under all of those mattresses that bothers her. And I think it's this interesting analogy of kind of what matters to folks and what shapes the conversation that is worth us thinking about when we think about sustainability efforts in our organizations, in our communities. You know, we work with we're lucky we get to work with some amazing sustainability advocates and catalysts out there in the world. And that means that we've got interactions with folks who are accomplishing significant things, who have their organizations on track to achieve zero waste, who are helping to build and occupy zero energy buildings. There's sort of all these really exciting things happening, organizations announcing significant reductions in resource use. And I know when I talk to these folks that one of their frustrations is they accomplish some of these goals, they have a big win on sustainability, and it's announced internally, and the feedback they get is something like this. We're so green, why is that faucet still dripping? What's the problem over here with this? And so I want to really talk about what's under that and why it matters that folks are seeing the pea rather than this huge pile of mattresses. All of the accomplishments are being kind of overlooked for this really small issue that from a sustainability perspective isn't material. In an industrial facility that's using millions of gallons of water annually for a process, the dripping faucet in the bathroom is completely immaterial from a scientific perspective. From a human perspective, though, it really matters. Now let's talk a little bit about why. You know, we talk a lot about sustainability as a journey, and I think when we talk about that, we think about that in two ways. Certainly, you are on a journey to reduce your resource use, to reduce your emissions. You're looking forward to these big goals in terms of those accomplishments. The other journey you're on, though, simultaneously here is one of engagement, because to reach those big goals, you need everybody on board. And so as much as this is a journey about reaching the big goals, it's also a journey about gathering everyone and bringing them with you to that place. And that means that people are going to be in a different spot thinking about this journey. So while you might well be really focused on the vision and thinking about the goals that are around that curve in the road, there are some folks on this journey with you who are paying attention to the trees right here, or the grass or the pebbles. Some of those folks might well know that they're not going to be with you by the time you hit those big goals around the thing. What matters to them is the here and now. And if you're aiming to build a culture, you have to be sensitive to that. If you've watched some of our other webinars, we're fans of the way Seth Godin thinks about people in their communities, and this idea that people like us do things like this. That if we want to build a culture, it's about shared values of we're the kind of people who do things like this. We're the kind of people who think about new ways to reduce resource use in our facility. We're the kind of people who volunteer for committees to do a waste audit to further accelerate our path to zero waste. This is what you want, and it's a challenge when people go, but there's all this dumb stuff happening. Simultaneously with you telling me that we're on a path to be leaders in our field in water reduction, I look out the window and see that we're watering the grass in the rain. That's just dumb. Why are we doing dumb stuff? And part of what sustainability leaders need to understand is that when you're trying to build a culture, you don't want these inconsistencies getting in your way. Because the reality is, trivial things like this stand out like a sore thumb. We've all had that experience where we get a paper cut or we bang a finger, and then suddenly everything we do seems to involve that sore finger hitting other things that make it hurt even worse. Okay, that's kind of how the human brain works around this. If you're telling me that we're on a quest to reduce our energy usage, but everywhere I look, I see energy waste, it's hard for me to believe that quest is real. And I think it's important here to acknowledge that there's a scale, but also that the scale doesn't matter. So very often when I talk about this with sustainability folks, they'll go, but Kathy, the thing I'm doing is huge. I'm talking about hundreds of megawatt hours of electricity a year I'm saving. And these people are going on to me about the lights in a single conference room. It's trivial. Like, well, it is, except that there are a bunch of them, and they're all going on about these things in various ways. And if you don't keep them aligned with what you're doing, you have the potential that they're all going in different directions because the data they see isn't consistent with what you want them to vision for the organization. My favorite quote about culture comes from one of our past clients who talked about getting an entire employee population moving in the same direction, kind of the antithesis of my last boat shot. It's about everyone moving in the same direction. That's ultimately what this culture thing is. People like us do things like this. I look around my organization and I know we're going to do X, Y, and Z because those are the things that people like us do. People like us do things like this. This is a culture. And so it turns out that those small, trivial things that aren't going to help you achieve the big goals really matter in engaging everyone and making the story authentic. So even though those aren't the first things to do from a materiality standpoint, it's really important to have a process where they get done. To have someone that those things can get designated to who's going to see to them. If you are on a quest to dramatically reduce your global water consumption, it should be a priority that your bath fixtures are efficient and in good repair, because people see those all the time. And it becomes either evidence that affirms what you're doing or evidence that contradicts it and jeopardizes it. It's not going to be where you save things at the materiality level, but it's going to be where you convince people that what you're doing is real. Ultimately, your quest is that sustainability is the new normal, that this is just how we do things here. And people have to believe that that culture is real, which means they don't want to be in a situation where there are a lot of counterfactuals, where they're seeing all kinds of evidence of how the organization isn't really committed to these things. If you intend to win hearts and minds, you've got to be consistent, all the way down to the trivial. Even though that's annoying. I know it can be annoying. I know you want to focus on the ocean liners, not the little boats. The little boats matter too, and they're actually the ones who influence where the ocean liners go ultimately. I'm not sure that's a good naval analogy, but we'll let it be there. With that, I want to open things up to, if you've got questions. Our aim is always to keep these webinars pretty short, deliver a nugget, and let you get back to your day. Let me just look here to see. A great question. How do I make this point to my boss who is completely annoyed by all of those employee suggestions? So this is a really important point. And I hear this a lot. I've had this discussion with numerous sustainability professionals, particularly it seems like folks who report up through facilities folks who might be kind of frustrated with some of those employee suggestions anyway, sometimes around how light fixtures work or how, light sensors seems like a hot topic often in this realm. I think part of it is the point I'm making here, that we need them all to cooperate. You want all of those people in the building to turn off their monitors when they leave their desks at the end of the day. Most of us now have 2 big monitors on our desk. The electric usage on our desks is growing, despite the fact that those monitors are energy efficient. You want people to turn things off. They have to see evidence reflected that things get turned off here. If there are these big contradictions to what we're doing, it stands in the way of influencing people to do their part. It's as simple as that. I think it's important to acknowledge up front. So if the issue is that the lights in the women's bathroom never go off, that they're on a sensor but no one's ever seen them turn off. The problem is people feel like there's wasted energy there and it's pointless for them not to waste energy. It's not that fixing that light sensor is not going to make the corporate energy goals for the quarter. I think it's really important to be clear. That's not why you're doing this. You're not addressing these issues because you believe that they are material in a quantifiable way. You're addressing them because they're undermining the case you're making with rank and file employees. So it's a different argument entirely about why these things need to be addressed. And I think in our experience, coming at it that way, people go, oh, okay. They're still not often enthusiastic, but they get that it needs to be done and that it matters, rather than saying, no, those things don't matter at all. I'm not seeing more questions. So with that, I will close off because you are all busy doing incredibly important work. Thank you for all that you do. You've got my email if you've got other questions or want to chat with us about how we can help you make this case to folks in your organization. Thanks so much for all your efforts, and have a great day.